So we've got this weird dual split video type of thing that I wanted to do today because this idea, talked about by Craig Button on That's Hockey on TSN, is not really big enough to make one individual video about. Maybe we can make a short about it, I'm not sure. But we're going to be talking about Montreal, and we're also going to be talking about Vancouver, because there is a bigger discussion that we can have about the projected first overall pick. Now, before we dive into that, let's talk about what Craig Button said on That's Hockey. Sergei Bobrovsky to the Montreal Canadiens would make a whole lot of sense if that would be something Bobrovsky would be open to. Now, I'll just go out there and say this. I have been the biggest Sergei Bobrovsky fanboy this season, and I have been very disappointed with this guy. Look at me, going out there and taking Bobrovsky in two of my main fantasy leagues on ESPN and Yahoo because I'm like, yeah, this guy's a double-time Stanley Cup champion. He's playing behind one of the best teams in the NHL. 906 save percentage last year, 915 the year before that, a stellar playoff run both times they won the cup. Heck, his best playoff run was when they lost to Vegas with a 915 save percentage. In my mind, Sergei Bobrovsky was going to be a slam dunk. Until I realized, wait a minute, Barkov is out. Matthew Tkachuk wasn't available for most of the year. Sergei Bobrovsky is 37, and you would think that because he's in the last year of a $10 million AAV deal, he would really step it up. But it turns out the guy said, nah, sorry, fam. I got my 2 cups. I got my back-to-back-to-back Stanley Cup finalist participation trophies. I'm out. The guy's got an .874 save percentage this year. Still, he is 22-17-1. By some miracle, he's still finding ways to win games, and that's been the only saving grace for me and my fantasy team, the fact that he can still find ways to win, but .874 is absolutely terrible, and if you go over to the National Hockey League in its entirety, you will see that Sergei Bobrovsky is one of the worst goaltenders in the league. He is right there. .874 save percentage is good enough for top 10 worst goalie in the National Hockey League, and this guy is just barely better than Samuel Montembeault. I mean, Monty hasn't been good this season either, don't get me wrong, but the bar is so low here. And I understand the idea that some Canadiens fans would go out there and say, look at what George Costanza says. I completely agree. Bobrovsky just needs to be okay down the stretch and get into playoff Bob format once the playoff starts. We saw this with Bob 3 years ago. We know he can turn it on just like that. Bob 50% retained for Mayshar and a second would work. And then all the other replies say, okay, no it won't. He's old. Florida is still looking to make the playoffs. Bobrovsky is old. He is a washed-up bum. So, obviously opinions have varied when it comes to talking about Sergei Bobrovsky as a potential Montreal Canadiens trade target. I'm just thinking here that if this guy can miraculously turn his season around, I would honestly feel a lot more comfortable saying that that would happen with Florida rather than Montreal. I don't think a big trade over to the Habs is going to be what sets Bobrovsky off back onto the right path. I think it's just going to come naturally as Florida gets Tkachuk back and they end up starting to get more stable in front. Obviously, Barkov being out is the biggest hindrance of them all, but I do think that Sergei Bobrovsky is a guy that Montreal may or may not actually benefit too much from if they were to acquire him. Craig Button says that it would make sense if Bobrovsky would be open to it, but I don't know. Switching gears, let's go out there and talk about the Vancouver Canucks. This is a clip that was making the rounds on social media earlier this morning. It's Halford and Bruff in the morning talking with Rick Dhaliwal on the broadcast about how the Canucks are currently feeling about the upcoming NHL Draft. I was told the Canucks right now have Stenberg rated higher than McKenna. And that is a piece of information that a lot of Canucks fans have responded to rationally. Just kidding. A lot of people are freaking out about this. Not Jacob Doodle, he's kind of saying either or. Most scouting sites have Stenberg first. People are just super susceptible to recency bias. Stenberg was lauded after his World Juniors, and now McKenna is lauded after his NCAA run. Wait for the end of the season to make final calls. Another tweet goes out there and says that the Vancouver Canucks can win the lottery and trade down. Absolutely not. That is not the way they should go about it. I would lean to Stenberg as well because he can play both sides and is a much more mature and complete player. Of course the Canucks like Stenberg more. They want the prospect that's ready to play in the NHL more than the guy with the higher ceiling. They're going to screw this up. Now, for what it's worth, this is where the PNHLE rankings come into play. Big shout out over to NHL Rank King on Twitter. Big fan of their work. Have always been a big fan of their work. When you take a look at the projected NHL E-score rankings of how things are going right now, Stenberg actually is the number one guy. Over Carson Carrolls, Alexander Zhuravsky, Dmitry Simashev, Ryan Lynn, and then Gavin McKenna out there in Penn State University. These numbers are aggregated based off of league difficulty and overall production by these players in those leagues, combined with their age and position, so you have a pretty interesting calculation as to how far everything can go. Gavin McKenna, for what it's worth, hasn't produced as well in the first half of the year compared to some of these other guys, which is why his PNHLE score is just ranked 6th overall. Stenberg, though, absolutely lighting the lamp in Sweden with numbers that we haven't seen literally since the Sedin twins. He's doing a pretty good job at maintaining that number one spot. Look at the gap, eh? It's a 20-point gap, almost 20 points for Ivar Stenberg over there. Now, taking a look at Dave Hall's tweet, this was really interesting as well. I'm seeing a lot of sighs at the idea of Vancouver potentially having Stenberg over McKenna. I'm genuinely curious as to why. Is it nationality? Is it projection or skill set? I think both are incredible players, so I'm just interested to hear. It's a fair debate, but one that likely goes right down to the wire. But based off of some of the reactions, I do think a few of you are sleeping on Stenberg's skill. His offensive creativity isn't far off, and he plays a complete game. For those saying you can't win with players like him, I'm not sure you've watched him enough, or at all. If I'm Vancouver, I probably still lean McKenna for many of the reasons mentioned. That said, both have the potential to be excellent players. And let's be careful speaking in absolutes. None of us know what 5 years down the road looks like or will look like for either player, or who will be better at that stage. If the Canucks are fortunate enough to win first overall and select Stenberg, embrace it. Either way, you're getting a terrific player. I think that happens to be the way most Canucks fans are perceiving a lot of this nowadays. I was super high on Stenberg after the World Juniors. I do think that McKenna's extended production in the NCAA lately has skewed my perspective his way a bit, but Stenberg is still absolutely the real deal too. 32 points in 37 games played for Frölunda in the SHL. You literally cannot find guys recently that have done as well as Stenberg is doing at the U18 or the U19 level anywhere close by. I mean, the guy that had the most points at 18 in the SHL in this millennium was Elias Lindholm. He had 30 points in 48 games. Stenberg is at 32 in 37 games. There is a very realistic chance that Stenberg is able to take over Daniel Sedin's record for an 18-year-old's point production in the SHL. He is already super close to matching Henrik Sedin. As long as Stenberg gets the games and he continues producing at this rate, he can become the highest scoring junior Swede of all time. And hyperbolic or not, that's pretty good. So, Vancouver having Stenberg ranked number one over McKenna, is it surprising? You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Is it the pick that I would make at this stage? I'd say probably not. I do like the idea of McKenna and his ceiling being higher. But with that said, let's get some comments going in the comments section. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.